Hey guys, it's Darwin here with my weekly Q&A to answer more of your questions. If you want to leave a question for next week's Q&A, you can either leave it in the comment box below or send me a video question over to darwinonthetrail@yahoo.com, and then next week I'll answer as many as I possibly can. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into this week's first question. For the AT, would you recommend hanging the pot that you cook in, or is just cleaning enough to keep away interested animals? So, good question. So what I've always done is the pot that I cook in, the Snow Peak 700 titanium mug, I usually just clean it out a little bit after I get done eating with either some toilet paper, maybe a wet wipe if I am carrying those, or maybe just a little bit of water from my bottle. And then I always put it inside of my food bag and hang it up in a tree with my food. Even if I completely clean it, I always do that just to make sure there's no food residue on there, so that way there's not some critter trying to crawl in my pack or crawl in my tent at night to get at my cup. Now there are a handful of times where I've just cleaned it out and kept it in my tent, but I'm always kind of weary of that, so I always make sure that I put it in my food bag and hang it in a tree just in case. So many people change gear, me included. What do you do with your old gear? I feel like I'm just spending and accumulating too much stuff. So that's a really great question, and there are a handful of places to get rid of that used gear. There's always hikers out there that are just getting into backpacking and hiking. They're always looking for some good used gear just because they don't want to invest too much money right off the bat. So a couple things that I have used in the past to get rid of my gear are not only like Craigslist and eBay, which are good options, but also some forums and some Facebook pages. So one of the websites that I have used in the past quite a bit is whiteblaze.net. Not only is it a great website to find good resources for hiking the AT, hiking the PCT, hiking the CDT, good place to connect with other hikers that are going to be hiking that year, but they also have a classified section that you can either buy, sell, or trade gear on. Now, I personally sold a handful of things on there, and it's a great website and great community to be a part of anyways. And most of the cats that are on there are thru hikers. So even if you're in the market for getting some new ultralight gear, you can usually find some killer deals on there. But again, there's a lot of people that are just getting into backpacking. Maybe they're just going to start hiking the AT for the first time. They're going to be on there perusing the classifieds looking for some good used gear, so I would always suggest utilizing Whiteblaze. And then there's a handful of great Facebook groups that I'm actually a part of. So my number one is Gear Rat Outdoors. Gear Rat Outdoors is this great Facebook page that's mainly made for hikers and backpackers, climbers, mountaineers, and anybody else that's into the outdoors. It's a discussion page, it's a classifieds page. I have bought and sold a lot of stuff on there. It's ran by a dude named Christian Millet, who is a really solid cat and actually a gear entrepreneur himself that has started his own gear company called Belay Gear. Yes, that was a plug for you, Christian. So I definitely suggest getting on there, joining. It's a really great community of hikers and backpackers and an awesome place to unload some of your old gear.
Hey Darwin, have you ever bumped into any of your YouTube subscribers or Instagram followers or anybody on Facebook while you're out on the trail, or have you actually bumped into somebody that you follow on any of those channels? And what would that be like? Maybe them hiking with you for a few miles, or maybe if they camp near your camp at the end of the day. I'm just curious as to how often people these days bump into each other that follow one another on social media.
So yeah, it actually happens to me quite a lot, and a lot lately. Not only in out on the trail, but also in my day-to-day life. So I do work at a local outfitter and a bike shop here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So about 2 or 3 times a week, I'll usually have somebody come into the shop and look at me and kind of stare at me for a minute and be like, hey, are you the dude that makes those YouTube videos? And we end up getting into a discussion. And it's kind of cool, and it's kind of weird because, you know, I'm used to talking to you guys through video, through comments. So it's always kind of strange meeting somebody face to face, but it's always really awesome to also meet people because people always have something great to say. I've yet to run into anybody that's been like, hey, are you the dude who makes those YouTube videos? You suck. So that hasn't happened yet, which I'm sure I'm probably on the path to getting that eventually, but it hasn't happened yet. And I always love to meet people in person because it's always great to put a face to some of those comments, to some of those subscribers, and to some of those views. So I always hope to see all of you and meet all of you eventually sometime, whether it's on a trail, whether it's at work, or whether I'm just traveling. I absolutely love that interaction. You once mentioned you were a side sleeper. Do you use a mummy style sleeping bag? If so, how do you find it with side sleeping? So, good question, Frank. I do not use a mummy side sleeping bag. I use a quilt for that reason, because I am a side sleeper and because I do a lot of tossing and turning when I sleep at night. I'm just an active sleeper. I tend to prefer a quilt over a mummy bag because it allows me to move around a lot more in it. To me, mummy bags have always kind of felt a little too restricted, and obviously I've used them in the past, but I usually find myself twisted and contorted around in the bag either in the morning or during the night, and that's one of the main reasons I switched to a quilt. Now, the quilt that I used is the Enlightened Equipment Revelation 20, and I definitely suggest checking it out if you're a tosser and a turner, or if you're a side sleeper, or just want to switch to a quilt. So not too long ago, I actually made a video on my quilt and why I switched from a mummy bag. So I'll put a link up here in the corner somewhere if you want to go check that video out. If you have not hiked for at least 4 weeks, are there any exercises that you perform to get into hiking shape? I hike. Just get out on the trail and hike. It's the best exercise that you can do. Darwin, with the endless supply of headlamps out there, can you recommend one? I think it would be a great idea for the headlamp to also have a red light, as to not be that guy on the trail who's being an annoyance to others while in camp at night while others are trying to sleep. So Thomas, yeah, there is one that I can recommend. The headlamp that I used in 2015 and 2016 out on the AT, same headlamp I used on the Arizona Trail, the same one I used on the Continental Divide Trail, and probably the same one that I'll be using on the PCT next year is the Black Diamond Spot. I love that headlamp, and Snuggles has the exact same one. That has been a super great headlamp. Now, it's not a rechargeable one, and I've thought about getting one of those in the past, but for now, I just use the Spot. It has the red light, it has a couple different settings on the bright mode, and it even has a fade if you want to bring the light down to a certain level. So I highly recommend checking that one out. I'll put a link in the description box below if you want to go see that for yourself. But all headlamps are great. Just kind of pick what works for you, what's in your budget, but I personally recommend the Spot.
Hey Darwin, this is Chuck Walla out in Arizona. I got a question about your camera setup gear. I know recently you got the Canon G7X Mark II, and I've been looking at that camera along with some other cameras. What I'm interested in is, how do you protect your camera gear when you're out on the trail? Right now I just use my Samsung Galaxy S7, which is waterproof and dustproof, so I haven't had to really worry about it. So I'm wondering how you protect your camera gear. Thanks for your videos. I appreciate all your help. Talk to you later. Bye.
So that's a good question, and one that I've actually been thinking about a lot lately. So my plan as of now, and what I have currently been using, is I just kind of take my camera, I put it in a big Ziploc bag, wrap it up, and then I put it into my pack pretty much under my down jacket. So it's nice and protected just in case my pack hits a rock or anything. I haven't really hardcore invested in any sort of case or protection for the camera. I'm just kind of rolling with it right now. But I definitely make sure that I put it in a Ziploc bag just in case I get in a bunch of rain. I want to make sure it doesn't get wet and it doesn't screw the camera up. Now, pretty much one thing that I've come to terms with is taking that camera out on the PCT next year, it's probably going to break. I'm probably going to break the screen. It's probably going to get some water damage. I'm going to break something on that camera. You kind of can't go 5 to 6 months out on a long distance trail doing all those miles and keep that thing safe. Even with some sort of protective case, I'm sure something stupid will happen. I will drop that camera and I will break that. And I'm kind of okay with that. Obviously it's an expensive camera and I don't want that to happen, but I think it's just something as a thru hiker and as a backpacker and a hiker that you just kind of deal with, and you know is probably a pretty good chance that you're gonna break something that's that nice. But I definitely keep it in a Ziploc bag and put it in a safe spot in my pack that's well padded to make sure that I don't break it and I don't get it wet. All right guys, last question of the week. How far in advance did you plan where you were going to stay each night? Did you make an itinerary before your hike or went day by day along the trail? So that is a killer question, and actually a question that I've gotten a handful of times. I didn't make any type of itinerary. Whenever you first set out for a thru hike like the AT, we did plan what mileage we were going to do and where we were going to stay for the first handful of nights, but you soon find out that it doesn't work, mainly because every day it's different. Different terrain, different mileage, different places, and they're spaced out differently. So depending on how you feel that day really depends on how your day goes. Most of the time in the morning when Snuggles and I would wake up, we would kind of plan, all right, today we're gonna do a 15-mile day, and this is the shelter or the camp spot that we're shooting for. But throughout the day, that usually changed. Some days we were super wore out and it was super hard terrain and we might just stop early. Other days it was super great terrain and we were feeling awesome, so we would push way past that shelter. So it's kind of always hard to plan that. I do know a handful of hikers that actually planned their entire hike, typed it all out and made a full itinerary. And to be honest, I don't really know how that worked out for them in the long term, but me personally, I just get out on the trail and just kind of go day by day. I think that's the best way to do it. That way you're not being too analytical about it. You're not overthinking it. You're just hiking and doing what feels good to you. All right, so if you want to leave a question for next week's Q&A, you can either leave it in the comment box below or send me a video question over to darwinonthetrail@yahoo.com, and then next week I'll answer as many as I possibly can. If you haven't got a chance yet, go over and check me out on Instagram. I've been posting a lot of new photos lately of some of the things that Snuggles and I have going on throughout the week, plus some pictures from some past hikes, so go check those out. By the way, I don't say nude photos, I say new photos. If you found any value in this video, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and as always guys, thanks for watching.